There is a silent epidemic happening right at the moment. And no, it's not COVID. It is the fracturing and minimising of our attention spans and our ability to pay attention even to things that we purport to enjoy doing. That's the topic covered in Johann Hari's new one, Stolen Focus. Let's check it out. So, I've been following Johann's work for a long time now. I first found his material with Lost Connections, his book on depression, and I was immediately in love with his work. If you don't know who he is, Johann Hari is a British author who writes on topics about addiction, depression, the war on drugs, and that type of thing. And his new book, Stolen Focus, it came about due to his own kind of fragmenting attention span, and it all really came to a head when he had to take his nephew to Graceland. So his nephew was in love with Elvis as a young one, and he promised him that he would take him to Graceland, and then when they got there, the nephew literally spent the whole time looking down, scrolling through his Snapchat and stuff like that, when it's like, dude, this is kind of like your Mecca. You always wanted to come here, and yet you're not even looking up from your phone at all. And it's a real pity. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm finding myself in this situation a fair bit as well. I mean, I used to spend hours upon hours hunched over my desk drawing. I'm finding that less and less and less and less. You're feeling like, I'm not sure about you guys, but I almost feel when I'm at my worst in social media, I have this kind of profound sense of missing out, like I need to be checking it every 5 seconds. And I mean, the current political climate doesn't help that at all. But I'm trying to pull myself away from that. I like more long-form content myself. That is a giant wasp. It shows that they're human, they're actually engaged, and it's better for us because it's long, it's contemplative, it actually gets your brain working, as opposed to this soundbite garbage that the news media just churns out. Alrighty, so within these pages, Johann talks about some extremely worrying statistics, like for the average college-age student in America, they actually only have an attention span between 19 seconds and 3 minutes. With people my age being a kind of, early middle-aged, our attention span has been shrunk down to the better part of 3 to 9 minutes. Now that should truly terrify some people, because I don't know about you, but I'm at an age now where I'm trying to teach my children how to learn. That was the biggest part of my tertiary education. Like, I really sucked at high school. If it wasn't art, I genuinely didn't care, but that's just because the teachers failed to really grasp, or they really failed to connect with me, and I think that's a huge element. And if we can't rein in our attention spans, we are going to lose the ability to actually educate people, which should really truly terrify you. So our ability to concentrate at work especially is seriously diminishing, with the average worker today only getting about 3 to 4 hours of work done over the course of an 8-hour day. And it's kind of interesting because I'm quite interested in things like productivity in the workplace and things like that, and how we can accentuate that. But I mean, like in the 80s, the new computer age promised us the fact that we should only be working about this per day anyway, because the computer has increased productivity through the roof. But the layperson isn't really seeing any benefit from that. It's like the investor class that are eating all of the prosperity generated by our increase in productivity. However, that doesn't diminish the fact that our attention spans are waning. I mean, it's not uncommon for a human being to be checking their phone up to 2,000 times in a day. And that's kind of scary. And I mean, I guess it's all kind of, it revolves around this weird, it's almost like social media induced fear of missing out. So you have to constantly be checking it, and that's no way to really live. It's kind of how social media is destroying our attention spans. So if you don't know about this, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and all of these companies, Google as well, they actually hire psychologists to make this stuff more addictive, to make it so you have trouble looking away. So these things use dopamine cycles, or essentially it's the same mechanism. The infinite scroll mechanism in most of these social media apps is very, very similar and operates inside your brain in a very similar manner to how pokie machines. It's the, ooh, I hope I win. Ooh, I hope I win. But it's scroll, hoping for that little bit of a dopamine kick that you make you feel okay for a couple of seconds and then back to the infinite scroll. So these companies actually are paying people to come up with ways to make it more addictive. And there's a guy that gets interviewed in here. His name's Tristan Harris. If you've heard of a documentary called The Social Dilemma, he's involved in that. So he used to work at Google, and he invented a browser plugin which allowed people to kind of like highlight a word, and instead of kind of leaping from like Wikipedia page to Wikipedia page, it would bring up a little internal pop-up window that told you about the words that you've highlighted, like meanings and stuff like that. And his company got bought out by Google, where he became entrenched in their browser development team in terms of how to, like, the way that these things are phrased internally inside these companies are kind of the actual polar opposite of how we're talking about them today in terms of mental health. They talk about it in terms of engagement. So engagement to them is actually your attention, and they are carving it up and selling it in smaller pieces to advertisers. So effectively what they're doing is they've monetized your eyeballs. Yeah, these companies have monetized you being distracted. Essentially, that's what they're selling, is your attention carved up into smaller and smaller chunks so they can use it to sell stuff to you. And the really insidious thing behind this is we are constantly giving Facebook and companies like that, we're giving them the data to manipulate us in a more efficient manner, right? So if you're constantly liking things on Facebook, giving it the old, what you're telling Facebook is, this is the stuff that I can put in front of you that will capture your attention, and then we can then on-sell it to make money. Now, Tristan Harris eventually became so disillusioned with this at Google because he took memos of this up to the top brass, and they effectively said, stop bringing us stuff like this because this is counter to our ability to make money. So if we do the right thing, it's the whole don't be evil. If they do the right thing, they make less money. So yeah, Tristan became really disillusioned with Google because they kind of gave him a title job. I think he was the head of digital ethics or something like that, which was only a position in title only, and they basically ignored every single thing that he went on to say because the implications of it meant that they had to make less money. So he had ideas, instead of a notification pinging every time you got an email, you would just get a notification list once a day of all the emails you received, thus intruding into your life much less and keeping your ability to concentrate intact. And essentially the top brass at Google told him to fuck off, because that means you're engaged with their product less. That means they can't sell your attention, which means they make less money, and we can't have that. So in his interview with Tristan Harris, he comes out with one of the greatest quotes on this topic that I have ever heard. And that is that the axe existed for 10,000 years before anybody thought to put a handle on it. Social media has existed for less than 10,000 days. Just let that one simmer in your noggin for a bit. Okay, so the fear of missing out when it comes to social media. Johann talks about a phenomenon which in psychology it's known as fear-induced He talks about a phenomenon in psychology which they call stress-induced hypervigilance, and this relates back to Johann's first book, Lost Connections. It is possible to manipulate someone's attention through stress. And it's the same for depression as well. So what essentially it means is, if you're being chased by a bear for a prolonged period of time, your body physiology changes because it expects to be in a fight or flight situation constantly. And if it is never given the chance to reset, it just stays in that spot, and you will be looking for that bear jumping out behind every single tree you pass. So you just be hypervigilant, constantly looking for the next stressor. And after a while, that changes your brain chemistry and will lead to full-blown depression or some kind of other mood disorders. It becomes extremely hard to let go of that because, like I said, your body thinks that this is the new normal. The way to avoid stress-induced hypervigilance, the best way we know how, it's getting outside, talking to your friends, getting involved in something that triggers a flow state, something that you are so focused on that you could quite easily lose a day in it. So Johann talks about some of the things that we can do to combat this. And one of the things that really, really resonated with me, my favourite saying, is the concept of flow states, of using pre-commitment and flow states to block out periods of time where you do nothing else but deep work. If you've ever read any Cal Newport, he talks about this quite a lot. And I think his newest book is all about actually just completely getting rid of email because, I mean, let's face it, I don't know about you, but most of my email and social media for that matter is nothing but advertising. Like, I rarely see posts from my friends anymore. And, I mean, that's what its original function was for. So why are we still using it when it's malformed? It's no longer the thing that we were actually sold initially, and it's actually taking away from our lives. Yeah, it's not good. But anyway, like I said, I digress. The idea of pre-commitment, so taking pre-commitment from a addiction point of view, that is something like, I know I have a problem with drinking, so I'm not going to let any alcohol be in the house. Johann talks about, in terms of pre-commitment, in terms of not using social media, he has this little plastic safe that he can put his phone in, and then you adjust a timer on it and it won't unlock for a set period of time which you can choose. I think that is actually a bit of overkill. Like, we need to address this in a better way up here. And while pre-commitment is a very good way, like I said, you've got to really be 100% on it. And I think the best type of pre-commitment is getting off of Twitter. I mean, Twitter especially has always seemed like a toxic hellhole to me. I only really ever indulged in Facebook myself, and I'm getting less and less actual usage out of it. Like I said, it's all advertising anyway. But yeah, like I said, the other part that Johann talks about specifically is flow states. And a flow state is where you're kind of in a bit of a... It's kind of like a creative manic state where you're so focused on something that you lose all sense of ego and time. I used to get this quite a lot when I'm really, really engaged in artwork. Lots of writers talk fondly of flow states. The idea itself comes from, and I'm going to butcher this person's name, Csikszentmihalyi is, I want to say, a Hungarian, so Eastern European writer. So if you ever come across the book Flow, give that one a read because it's well worth your time, and it goes a bit deep. So this one is kind of like a taster of all the different things that you can do. And yeah, I think we all need to put our phones down every now and again and start engaging with the world around us. The world is not tapping with your fingers. The world is out here and you're missing it. Go explore the world. Get out there a bit. Do some things that will get you away from the screen. I mean, do you really want to get to 80 years old, look back and think to yourself, oh, I really wish I spent more time on Twitter? I don't think you will, personally. But, like I said, this is a global problem, but I think it only has personal solutions. Alrighty guys, it's time to wrap this one up. I want to know, have you read Johann Hari's Stolen Focus? If you have, I want to chat to you about it in the comments below. It is a awesome read, just like the rest of Johann's work. You should check all of it out. He's done Lost Connections, which is about depression and the opioid crisis, and he has also done Chasing the Scream, which is about the abysmal failure of the war on drugs. And yeah, it is all of them are well worth a read. I think you should definitely check them out. And this one is no exception. I actually reckon this might be Johann's best work yet, but I'll leave that up to you to judge for yourself. Until next time, I'm Nathan. This is Walk It Off. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and go outside, get better, and be awesome. Catch you next time, guys.